to others. Our idea is that we should be growing our own food as much as possible. She has been an inspiration for all of us. So, that space is not a constraint. You can do whatever little you can do with whatever little space you have around you. She has been a regular inspiration for all the students for whom we have been conducting programs throughout Kids for Tigers. So she's the Mumbai coordinator for Kids for Tigers as well. And she believes that very firmly that we should be not only leaving a better planet for our kids, but also a very good generation for our planet, so that the planet can heal itself and grow and be sustainable for the next generation as well. So Preeti ma'am, over to you. We are here to learn from you today.
Thank you, Amandeep, and it's a pleasure to be here today. So let me begin by asking you if I am audible. Am I audible to everyone?
Yeah, Preeti, you're audible.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yeah.
So I would like to start by saying that kitchen gardening is not rocket science. Anybody and everybody can do it. And whether you have a green thumb or not, everyone can grow plants. So it's not something that is very difficult to do. But yes, what is difficult, or what might be challenging, I wouldn't say difficult, what might be challenging is how to manage the space you have and what exactly can you grow in the space available to you. So let's begin very quickly, because if we have a demo, we may run out of time. So obviously the very first step that you need to do in your house is to assess the sunlight that is available to you in your house. Very often one side of the house receives maximum amount of sunlight, whereas the other side of the house or your apartment might be in shade. So if it is or if your entire apartment is in a very shady place, then it becomes difficult to grow vegetables, but you definitely can grow herbs and you can grow green leafy vegetables as well. But you do need at least some amount of sunlight or bright light to be present. Simply because the plants require that sunlight for photosynthesis, whereby they can generate their own food and of course grow and remain healthy. So find the sunniest part of your house and decide whether it is suitable for your kitchen garden or not. Now, it could be a balcony, it could be a windowsill, it could be, those box grills which are on the outside of the window, which have a little bit of space to put a few pots. Wherever you find it, you can start growing your garden there. Now, obviously, the next thing that you need to do is choose your pots or choose your containers in which you're going to grow your kitchen garden. So plants don't really favor any particular kind of container. You can grow plants in any container. It could be Tetra Paks, it could be old PET bottles, discarded mineral water bottles, discarded Coke bottles, or any of those oil cans, milk Tetra Paks, juice Tetra Paks. All of these can become very good containers for growing plants. So choose your container. So if you want to go the budget way, use whatever you have available with you, or you can go and buy new pots, which could be plastic or ceramic or metallic or terracotta. So it's up to you what you want to use as a container for your plant. Also plan out your space. How much space do you have? And then depending on that, as per your interest, whether you want to have a few of them mounted on the walls. You also get very beautiful wall mounting containers nowadays, which are space savers, and you can use those, or you can do something like what you see in the photograph over here, where they are all hung on a chain or on a rope, and they're just hanging pots. So how you put up your kitchen garden, how you place your pots, how you do up that space can become a conversation starter with your friends and family and visitors. Now, depending on the amount of sunlight that you have or that is available to you in your house, you have to very carefully choose what you want to grow. So if you have about 2 to 4 hours of sunlight, you can definitely grow herbs. You can definitely grow leafy vegetables. But if you want to grow vegetables like tomatoes, brinjals, lady's finger, or okra, all of these require at least 4 to 6 hours of full sunlight. So it depends on you and the sunlight available to you, what you want to grow. All right. All of these that I've mentioned here, mint, brinjal, tomato, okra, lettuce, tulsi, lemongrass, basil, aloe vera, spinach, celery, methi, all of this is possible in pots. So don't hesitate to try out things. Only question that you have to answer is how much sunlight is available to me. So you've chosen your pots, you've decided where to place them, you've decided what you want to grow. Now what you need is the right kind of soil. Soil is extremely important, and most nurseries or even online, you get potting mix, which is a ready mixture of organic compost, some soil. It could be red mud or it could be black mud, but usually it's a mixture of some kind of compost and soil which they sell. It may also contain certain amount of white pieces, white bits that look like thermocol bits, but they could be perlite. Perlite is something which allows the pots to drain very well. Okay, so it helps in draining the pot, because we don't want water to remain stagnant in any pots. We want that water to drain away. So you get a potting mix ready-made, or you could create your own potting mix if you have the time and you have the space. You could take about 75% of compost and 25% of red soil, mix it together, and you have your potting mix ready. Remember, at the bottom of the pot, there have to be holes to allow drainage, and you would necessarily have to cover these holes with pebbles. This again ensures that the holes are not blocked by the soil, and good drainage is possible. Always keep a pack of organic fertilizer handy to top up the nutrition levels as the plant grows, because the pot will contain only so much nutrition, and as the plant grows, you require to keep topping up your requirements. Never ever overwater your plants. So always check by putting a little pencil inside your pot, or an ice cream stick, or even any of those wooden skewers that you have. You could put one of those into the pot and check. If it comes out dry, definitely your plant requires watering. But if you have soil stuck to it, quite a bit of soil stuck to it, then you don't really need to water the plant. Maybe just the top layer is looking dry, and you could just sprinkle some water or spray some water onto that soil. So remember, getting the soil right is very, very important. And when we are talking about soil and nutrition, the three big ones that you have to keep in mind are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So the NPK is very, very important. And what do each of these do? Nitrogen will allow the plant to grow well. It will sprout well. It will throw up very nice leaves and stems. And that is what nitrogen is required for. Phosphorus is required for flowering and fruiting. Okay. Also, it ensures that there is a good root system for the plant when there is enough phosphorus. Potassium helps the plant fight disease, and that is why we require potassium. So when your plant, and when we need to add this nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, there is a time for it, there is a requirement for it, and I will talk to you about it in a bit. So the next is to get your seeds and saplings. Now you could either get them from your friendly neighborhood gardeners, any friends, any groups that you may have joined. Usually they exchange seeds, and that is a very, very good source of getting good seeds. Or you could order seeds online. There are a few websites that deliver very good open pollinated non-GMO seeds, and those are the ones that I use. So they are not, you don't get those classic one size fruits. They're all different. They're all open sourced and open pollinated, and they are the best seeds, I feel, for if you are really looking into having some organic garden or good healthy food that you grow yourself. So the websites that you could probably look at for this is one that goes by the name All That Grows. Okay, it goes by the name All That Grows. And you could also look at a website called Ugau. Both these websites have seeds which are open pollinated and non-GMO. All right. So get your seeds, get your saplings, and you are ready to start planting your garden. Now you've done your sowing, your plants are growing well, but that doesn't mean that just watering the plant once a day or twice a day is sufficient. You need to look at your plants daily. The reason being, if you don't cast an eye on your plants, or if you're not aware of what's happening to your plants, then an insect attack or a disease might get out of hand. Whereas if you were vigilant enough, you could nip it in the bud. So taking a look at your plants, you would probably see some drooping leaves or dry soil or an insect attack. And this immediately can be dealt with before it spreads to the rest of the plants. If you're traveling, you will wonder, what do I do with my plants? So nowadays there are those things available where you can, invert a bottle, and you have a little dispenser which is stuck in the soil. So you can actually regulate the amount of water going into the soil at one time. So it's like a mini drip irrigation system, and drop by drop the water goes into the soil. So if you're gone for 3-4 days, you can easily fill up a bottle like this, regulate the supply, and leave the plants in the house. Or you could request your neighbors to water the plants. Usually, at least in Mumbai, I've seen this, there is a system where one house key is always left with the neighbors in case somebody forgets their key and has to return home and finds that the door is locked. So share your produce with your neighbors when you harvest, so that they also feel included in your kitchen gardening efforts. Interact with your plants, love them, and basically you have to let nature overwhelm you. You have to just submit to what is happening and enjoy whatever you can see growing in front of you. So the more you grow, the more you will learn. And I am going to show you a few things before we end this thing. So once you start growing, you will discover challenges on an almost daily basis. You may lose some plants to begin with. Don't feel disheartened. But as the plants grow and they start flowering and fruiting, the joy is going to be immense. It is like a miracle that you're witnessing every single day. You will encounter, as I said, challenges on a daily basis. You will learn to fight those challenges on a daily basis, and your bounty of knowledge is only going to increase on a daily basis. You will feel immense joy, trust me, when you harvest those few tomatoes, the first few tomatoes, the first spinach leaves that you will grow in your own garden. And remember, you could also become a source of seeds and saplings to others. You could be a motivating force for others to start doing the same as what you are doing. So the basic idea here is to grow your own food, but enjoy doing it. Have fun. It is not a stressful job. It is in fact a stress buster. So for me, spending my Saturday and Sunday mornings a couple of hours in the hot sun, in that little space that I have is amazing because I get to see so many things. I have seen different kinds of bees coming and pollinating my flowers. I have seen a variety of butterflies visiting my garden. Uh, I have a little lily pond, a pot which serves as a lily pond, and I have birds coming and bathing in that every single day. I have sparrows and many other kinds of birds who are visiting my garden and nesting in it also. So it is a call for everyone. Your one little kitchen garden can start a little biodiversity hub right in your home. It will start small, but it will grow as you grow along with it. So this is a view of my garden, which is a very, very small space I have in the front of my house. And the plants that I'm growing here are basically tomatoes. There are a few flowers. There is spinach and there is chilies. So a lot of stuff. And of course, on the side, I have flowering plants like hibiscus and lang lang and the son safa and stuff like that. So this is what I harvest basically. Okay, this is just an example of what I can grow in my garden. So what do I grow? I grow beans, I grow brinjals, I grow roselle. Roselle in Marathi is also called ambadi, or in Andhra Pradesh is known as gongura. So roselle leaves, we cook them and make a vegetable out of it. Chilies, green chilies, tomatoes, both the big round red ones as well as cherry tomatoes, basil and celery, of course, spinach, definitely. And remember, when you plant spinach, you can harvest from the same pot at least 4 to 5 times if the nutrition is right. So one planting of spinach at the beginning of the season is going to provide you spinach for the entire season. Mustard greens is another thing that I grow. Also radish. So now when we are looking at underground plants like radish, you need to have a deeper pot, obviously, so that it can accommodate the radish. Otherwise, you will not have a fully grown radish. Yes, I also have a papaya tree, so I grow papayas also. And you can see in the picture, there is a cabbage. Now you might wonder, what is the red stuff on the cabbage? The red stuff is nothing but red chili powder. And that red chili powder is to prevent red ants from eating away at the tender leaves of cabbage as the cabbage grows. So very often plants are consumed by insects and by ants. And I don't like to kill those ants because they have their own jobs to do in nature. But I definitely want to save my cabbages from them. So what I do is I sprinkle red chili powder on the cabbage. Uh, every few days I need to add to the chili powder so that the ants don't get to it. Or you could steep dry red chilies in water overnight and strain out the chilies and use that water instead. So this is some of the biodiversity that I get to see. This is a frog which I have not been able to identify. Probably somebody in sanctuary will help me do it. But I do get visitors that are very, very regular. I see them on a daily basis. And there are visitors who are, temporary. They just come and they go as and when they feel like. So this is what, and yes, I also run the community garden in our society. We are fortunately blessed with a lot of space. So as you can see, there are fruit trees that are growing. There is a lot of other stuff that is growing in the community garden. So this is what I would love for everyone to take up as a challenge. If we can create little community gardens in our localities where everybody can access that space, work together as a community to grow food and share the food that everybody is growing. That would be the best possible way. And I see so many islands, traffic islands, that are filled with rubbish or are just lying vacant. Why can we not look at these, work with the municipal corporations and try and use those traffic islands to grow food? Not only will we be creating a hub for biodiversity in that area, but also a lot of homeless people would benefit from our efforts because they would have some good food to cook and eat, which otherwise they would be begging for. So as a social service, one can look at that option also. So I stopped sharing over here, and if you guys have your um, materials ready with you, we could do a little planting session right away. And I will just move my computer and camera a little distance away so that things are visible to you. Okay, before I move on, let me also tell you that there are a lot of seeds available in our own kitchens. Okay, we don't need to go buying everything. A lot of stuff is available in our kitchens, and I just want to share with you what I have got out of my kitchen today. So is this visible to everyone?
Yeah, we can see. We can see, Preeti, yes.
So this is nothing but whole methi seeds, sabut methi. Okay, very often we use this in tadkas in our cooking, and this is what we can plant also to grow methi leaves and have your leafy vegetables over there. This, of course, is mustard. So mustard is another ingredient that is always present in the kitchen. Yes, we don't grow mustard in the summers, but definitely post monsoon after October, you can sow your mustard and you don't have to worry about where you're going to get your sarson ka saag from, because you can plant mustard and spinach at the same time, and you will have enough to make vegetables for to make sarson ka saag for your family. These are lentils. These are masoor, whole masoor. You can sow these because when you put lentils in the pots or in your in the space that you are adding nitrogen to the soil, because these are leguminous plants. They have root nodules which will process atmospheric nitrogen into easily absorbed forms of nitrogen like nitrites and nitrates for the plants to absorb. So these are extremely important. Sometimes in my garden, what I do is I allow these lentils to grow for a height of about 3 to 4 feet. That is between sowing of seeds when the bed is empty. And when I'm ready to sow the seeds, I plow or I kind of cut these plants up and mix them up with the soil. So they have synthesized nitrogen, there is nitrogen in the soil, and plus I'm using this plant also as a green manure, which adds to the organic matter in the soil. Okay, so that is another way in which you can add fertilizers to your soil without having to resort to any kind of chemicals. Yes, so if you have seeds with you and if you have your pots with you, I would request you to switch on your camera so that I can see what you're doing, and you can follow me as I go along with, as I go ahead with this. Okay. So my question to you is, are you all going to do the seed planting or are you not going to do the seed planting? If you are, then I would like to see your cameras on.
Those who have got the materials, please turn on your cameras so you can plant along with Preeti.
Right. So depending on what you have, I hope you have some pebbles with you. So you would need to put the pebbles at the bottom of the pot. Yeah, line the bottom of the pot with pebbles. I have already added the pebbles and the soil to my pot, but you would need to add that. Right. So once you are done with that, you could also add your potting mix. So your pot needs to be about this full. Okay, leave about half an inch of space from the top, fill up to there. Okay. Okay, once you filled your pot, depending on the seeds that you have, if you have got seeds like spinach, or if you've got seeds like mustard, or any leafy vegetable seeds, you don't really need to sow them very deep. So half an inch deep is all that you need to go to sow these seeds. But if you're doing tomato, or if you're doing okra, or if you're doing brinjal, then it has to go in at least 1.5 inches deep. So depending on the seeds that you have, if they are leafy vegetables or herbs, half an inch deep into the soil is where you sow your seed. Now, if you have a pot which is about this big, you can sow at least 4 tomato seeds. You can sprinkle spinach over here. You need to sprinkle the mustard half inch deep and then cover it with soil. So depending on the herbs or leafy vegetables or other fruit bearing vegetable plants, your depth of sowing will depend on that. All right. So what I have here with me is, I have some okra seeds here. Okay, I have some okra seeds here. Now for my pot, for this size pot, I am going to put in only 5 seeds. I'm going to put in only 5 seeds and space them out. Okay, so here it goes. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 in the center, which is 5. Cover it with soil. Cover with soil. And then sprinkle water on top. After you've sown the seeds, you need to add water. You can't keep them dry. Right. Now, great. So having watered this, tomorrow you would keep it in a semi-shaded area until it sprouts. Once it has sprouted and you feel it is strong enough, it gets about 4 or 5 leaves, then you move it into the sunlight, full sunlight. Okay. Until then, we need to protect these seedlings. So if you feel that there isn't any semi-shaded area in your space, there you can't hide these from the sun, then you cover this pot very lightly with dry leaves so that the seedlings don't bear the full brunt of the sun. They are babies yet, and as they sprout, they're going to be very, very delicate. So until they reach 4 or 5 leaf stage, they need to be in semi-shade. Once they have reached 4 or 5 leaf stage, you can move it to the fully sunny area. Okay. Now, another thing that you need to keep in mind is when you plant tomatoes, when you plant brinjals, when you plant okra, okra can be planted directly where you want it to grow, or you put it in a pot like this, and then when the sapling is about this high, about 6 to 8 inches high, I will remove it and transplant it to another space where I want it to stay and grow. Okay, so tomatoes require transplanting. Some plants require transplanting. Tomatoes is one of them. Brinjal is another one. Okra can be done directly or transplanted. If you're growing cucumber or dudhi, or that's bottle gourd, or any kind of beans, those are vines. So you will need to support it with some kind of a trellis or something like that around the pot, so that you can have the vine growing on the support that you're providing it. Those should not be transplanted. Those have to be put in the pot. As they start growing, put your trellis around it so that the tendrils can catch onto the trellis and the plant will grow very beautifully. Okay. Now, certain troubleshooting elements that I want to talk about over here is that very often you might get something called a white fly in your garden. Okay, it's a white fly, very tiny, and it's not a very good one because it sits under the leaf and it grows over there. Then the leaf will turn yellow, brown, dry off and fall off, and it can affect the entire plant. So how do you deal with the white fly without actually having to resort to any insecticide or pesticide? What you need is 1 tablespoon of baking soda. Okay, if you want, you can write it down. 1 tablespoon of baking soda, 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil, any vegetable oil, and 1 liter of water. So 1 tablespoon baking soda, 1 tablespoon oil, and 1 liter of water. Mix it up in a spray can and spray it on the plant. Spray it on the leaves from beneath, not from the top, from the underneath, so that the white flies will not sit there. What it does, the baking soda, and what it does is it alters the pH on the surface of the leaf, and the white flies do not like the altered pH that baking soda does. And the oil helps it to stick on the leaf surface. Okay, the oil has got nothing else to do but helping that baking soda stick on the surface and remain for some time. Also remember, when you're watering plants, try not to make the entire plant wet unless it is required. If you want to make it wet, spraying the leaves with water, do it in the morning so that it gets enough time in the day to dry out. Because very often damp leaves will catch fungus and will spoil your plants. For ants, I already told you about the red chili and the chili powder bit. Also, what you can do is you can add banana peel. Okay, you can make a smoothie kind of a thing with banana peels and kind of maybe you could have 2 tablespoons of very thick smoothie, banana peel smoothie, and 1 liter of water. 2 tablespoons of very thick banana peel puree and 1 liter of water. Mix it up, and you can use that to water your plants, because then you're adding phosphorus to your plants. When you're using banana peel, you're adding phosphorus. For nitrogen, I already told you, you could use those lentils along with that. So, you know, if it's a big pot, you have 1 plant and you have a couple of lentil plants growing side by side, it will add nitrogen to the soil. If not, you can add coffee grounds. Coffee grounds. You make filter coffee, make sure you wash the grounds, because we don't want any sugar. If you're adding sugar to your filter coffee and you're then using it in the filter, then the sugar needs to be removed because it will attract ants. So coffee grounds you can add to the soil around the plant like a fertilizer, and it will get decomposed and you will be adding nitrogen to the soil. Again, even tea bags or tea that you strain out, tea leaves, use tea leaves, wash them so that you get rid of the sugar, and you can put it in the pots. That again adds nitrogen, and also the tea contains certain amount of tannin, which prevents a lot of insects from coming close to the plant. So it also acts as a pesticide or an insecticide. You could also crush boiled eggshells. Normally we throw away the eggshells, crush them in the mixer, make a fine powder out of those eggshells, and you can add that for calcium. So these are some of the everyday things that we have in our house, which we can use as fertilizers, as pesticides, insecticides. And if you do need to buy something, what you can probably do is use neem oil. We can buy neem oil from the nursery, or you get neem oil online also on gardening websites. Follow the dilution that is required that is prescribed on the bottle. They will tell you how many caps per liter you can use. But be careful with neem oil, because too much of neem oil can burn the plants. It can be very strong and the leaves can get burned. So you should do a trial before using neem oil on the plant. Just maybe 1 or 2 leaves you spray and you see what reaction they're giving. If they're fine, you can spray the entire plant. If not, reduce the quantity of neem oil even further, make it even more dilute, and then use it. Okay, because it can be very, very strong and it can burn the plants. So these are some of those, let me say, tips and tricks that I have learned along the way, and I have shared with you. So if any of you have any questions, I would be happy to answer those questions, because I really do. I could go on telling you more and more things, but until you start using those things, you're not going to find, you're not going to be able to really understand how they are working. So any questions, please go ahead.
Hi, if anyone has questions, please unmute yourself and ask the question, or you could even put it in the chat box. But for starters, Preeti,
Yeah.
I would love to ask a question. Like I said, I'm a total non-gardener. So what is one plant that a non-gardener can start with, which is very easy, and which will give me a satisfaction that, yeah, I've been able to garden.
Okay. So you can start with spinach.
Oh, okay.
You can start with coriander. Okay. So for coriander, you don't need to go to the nursery also. To buy seeds, sabut dhania that you have in the house.
Yeah.
Which is not roasted. Okay. Not to use roasted sabut dhania, but kacha sabut dhania. What you need to do is you need to just crush it a little bit so that the pods open up. And then sow it in the soil and keep it in, like I said, until it sprouts and gets 4-5 leaves semi-shaded. Once it gets those 4-5 leaves and looks like ready to take on the world, then you can put it out in the sun and you will have your coriander. Unfortunately, coriander, once you harvest, you need to sow it again. It's not like spinach where you can just use the leaves.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have a question.
So these are easy ones that can, any person who is afraid of trying something can try and feel happy that it works.
Wonderful. We have a question from Twizel. How to treat leaf curling in chili plants?
So leaf curling is basically caused by a pest or an insect which lays its eggs on the leaf underneath, and so the leaves curl later on to protect those leaves. So if you find leaves have curled, first of all, remove those curled leaves, just prune it. Okay. And the second thing is to use neem oil As I said, probably 1 tablespoon to a liter. Start with that concentration. And if it works, very good. If not, you can increase it to 1.5 tablespoons per liter. Neem oil works very well with these leaf curling insects.
Wonderful. Any other questions? Can you tell us a little bit more about pruning?
Okay. So pruning is something, see, there are, when you're growing vegetables, if you find that, for example, tomatoes, okay, tomatoes are very prone to fungus, are very prone to white flies, simply because they are so turgid, they're so filled with water. They're very, if you touch the stem of a tomato plant or a leaf, you will feel the dampness on your hand. So these plants are prone to anything that lives with the damp. Okay, so for that reason, what we need to do is we need to reduce the number of leaves that are growing on that plant and allow the sunlight to pass through the plants and touch every part of the plant. So if there is too much of foliage, then there is going to be shady parts which are going to remain permanently damp. So towards the bottom of the plant, remove all those leaves that are not required. Normally, and they will keep coming back and you have to keep on pruning these. Also, when you're pruning it, look at, so for flowering plants, you need to prune the moment the flower starts wilting. The problem with flowering plants is that if they realize that the flower has completed its cycle and the seeds have formed, the seed pod is formed, the petals have fallen off and the seeds have begun to grow, for the plant, it means that its life cycle is complete and it will start wilting and dying because the seeds have formed. So if you don't want that to happen, the moment the flower wilts, snip it off so that you will have more flowers growing. Also, if you want to have a branching system, if you want to have a bushy plant, then you have to, after the plant grows to about, say, 1 foot or 1.5 feet, you can snip off the shoot, the growing shoot. So what happens is the branching starts to happen below the shoot that has been snipped off. So then you can keep on pruning and cutting off the shoots so that more and more branches keep coming up on that plant. Also, if you are into roses, roses require a lot of pruning, and actually the stem on which the flower has grown, immediately below that you need to cut off the stem so that that stem is now going to is going to branch at the node and is going to grow another stem where a bud will grow. So pruning is important. Also, thinning is important. For example, if you have a pot which is packed with plants, like leafy plants, what will happen is they will not grow to their full size. Then what you will get is microgreens. Okay, densely packed pot will produce microgreens. If you want microgreens, that's fine. But if you don't want microgreens and you want proper full-grown spinach, for example, then I need to thin it out. I need to make sure that there is space for the plants to grow. So in that situation, I have to decide that I am going to get rid or I'm going to remove the weakest plant. So go look at your plants, look at your pot and decide which is the weakest one. You will know because the leaves will not be very strong. The stem will not be very strong. They would be falling on the side of the pot or something like that. And you remove those and thin it out so that the stronger plants have have the space to grow. The pruning of leaves on tomatoes, on brinjals also serves a similar purpose so that, what is growing well gets the space to grow. Otherwise, they're cramped and then you get smaller fruit and smaller flowers. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Preeti. We have a question on YouTube.
Yeah.
Sayu has asked, hi ma'am, how to plant onion seeds or radish and how to know when to harvest it?
Okay. So onions and radish have to be planted. If you want to grow onions and radish, they have to be grown from seed. Otherwise, you can just put an onion into soil and it will start growing and you will have onion greens, but it will not grow any new onions. Similarly, even garlic can be put in the soil and you will get garlic greens, but you will not grow any garlic unless you use seeds to grow these. Okay, that is number one. Now for onions and radish, since these are underground vegetables, you need to have a taller pot. Okay, a pot where you can have maybe about 2.5 to 3 feet high. The depth has to be 2.5 to 3 feet. Okay, so you you fill the pot halfway up, put the pebbles, put your potting soil halfway up, and you plant your seeds. All right, plant your seeds, water them, and as they start growing, keep adding every week a layer of soil. Okay, so as the plant grows and it grows above the pot, by the time it comes out of the pot, the leaves come out of the pot, your pot will be full of soil. Keep adding. Okay, the reason being, otherwise, if you plant it very shallow, the root does not penetrate that deep and you don't get a nicely formed radish or onion. But if you do this halfway method, very often you find that you have a very nice fully grown radish. Now in one pot, you can grow at the most 1 or 2 radishes. Similarly for onions, if you're growing it in pots. So you will need to have, if you want at least a dozen radishes, then you will need at least 6 pots to grow those radishes. The other option to pots is grow bags. Okay, grow bags are also nowadays available in the nurseries or online. They're made out of jute. It comes in very handy because you can never overwater if you've planted in a grow bag. Since it is made out of cloth or jute, the water will just drain away from there and there will be never any excess water in your pot. But if you have a plastic pot, very often you tend to overwater because it cannot drain out completely if the holes at the bottom are clogged. Whereas a terracotta pot which is not fired, okay, kacha mitti ka pot, that pot will allow water to evaporate if there is excess water. But a ceramic pot, metallic pot doesn't allow that. So you have to be very careful with the watering. So depending on which pot you're using, the planting method will remain the same for onions, radish, or any underground vegetable, whether it is carrot also. However, if you're going to try potatoes need kind of dry, loose soil. Okay, they cannot grow very well in moist conditions. So they need drier conditions. Onions also need not very dry conditions, but it can't be very soggy. None of these underground vegetables can grow in soil that is very soggy. It has to be well drained.
Mingma has asked,
Yeah.
how do we know if our plants have diseases or not and the nutrition required to treat it?
Okay. So diseases usually would be something like you will have spots on the leaves, or the leaves will have yellow patches, or they may curl, or you will suddenly find that the leaves are wilting and drooping. All these are signs of some kind of infection or a disease or nutrition falling short. So either one way of testing what nutrient is falling short is doing a soil test, a soil analysis. A soil analysis kit can easily be got at a nursery, or you need to go to a lab which does soil analysis. Or else the other option is that you very regularly keep on adding the nutrients that I told you about. And since these are all food materials and biodegradable, it will not harm your plant. Only the day you provide them with these smoothies and these drinks with nutrients in it, don't water your plant also, because all of these are mixed with water. So it serves as watering as well as food. So once a week, at least you need to feed one nutrient to your plant. So it could be nitrogen, it could be phosphorus, it could be potassium. All right. From where do you get phosphorus? As I said, banana peel powder is one of it. You can also get bone meal powder, which is available in the nurseries, and you can sprinkle. You have to rake the soil a little bit, put it inside, and then mix up the soil with the bone meal powder. For potassium, you have something called seaweed powder, which is available. That is another very good source for potassium for plants. So these can be done regularly, maybe once a week or once in 2 weeks. But once you set up a schedule, you need to keep up to that schedule, because otherwise it's going to cause an imbalance, and it would then reflect on your plant and what it is growing.
Freston asks, very informative session. I find myself growing more ornamentals because barely a few vegetable plants survive due to white flies, nutrition, etc.
Okay.
Your tips were valuable. I do have a question. Question is, how can we keep rats away without rodenticides?
Okay. Now for rats, the one way of keeping the rats out is to use, your disposable cutlery. You get forks, and I'm not advocating the plastic ones. You get wooden forks also, or bamboo forks. Use those, or you can get little. You can put those around your plant. Okay, basically put those around your plants as a deterrent for that rat, because if it pokes the rat, he is going to not want to come back over there. So I use that for cats as well as for rats, because very often I have cats coming and littering in the garden, and they dig up the soil to litter and then cover it up. But in the process, what they do is they have removed my seeds. So I put this around where I've sowed the seeds, even in the pots, and it deters them. If not, what you can do is, on Amazon, you get small, very small cow dung cakes for pujas. Okay, you will find it in the puja department or whatever it is called on Amazon. These are dry cow dung cakes. What you need to do is you powder that, mix it up with a little bit of water, and you sprinkle it all over your garden. The cow dung smell puts off the rats and the mice. When it was possible for me, I used to get fresh cow dung and spread it in the garden, and I never had a problem with the rats. In fact, the holes that rats make, the burrows that the rats make, I fill it up with these dry cow dung cakes. So then that burrow they don't use at all. So that is one way of, one or two ways in which you can keep mice and rats out of your space.
Wonderful. That was quite practical. He has another question. What is the use of ash or burnt dry leaves from a garden as a fertilizer?
It is only going to add nitrogen, if at all. And yes, you may have read about something called, there are people who perform this havan early morning at sunrise and at sunset. And apparently it is used as a fertilizer in the garden, because it has got the energy of the rising sun, and because you are chanting some mantras on while you're doing this havan. But by and large, wood ash or leaf litter which is burnt and spread over is just nitrogen. But I would suggest that you use leaf litter as a mulch to cover the soil, so that you have to water it less. You have to water your plants less, because they will not dry out so fast if they're covered with leaves. Also, weeds will not grow with such profusion if you mulch your plants. So having mulch around the plants is very good, because not only does it add organic matter to your pots and plants, but it will serve as to store moisture, and you don't have to water as much. Also, as you water, very often the soil flies out of the pots if you are using a hose pipe. So having leaves, one layer of leaves on the pots is helpful because then the water trickles down slowly and you're not losing soil. And it also prevents weeds from growing in your plants. So that is basically what it is with ash and leaf litter, which is burnt.
All right. I think we have one last question. Abhishek has asked, why do tomato plants die after they are hit by rain?
They die after they're hit by rain simply because that is too much of water for the tomato plant. It cannot take that much of water. So you have to protect it from getting too wet. So if you have a tomato plant exposed to a full shower of rain like we have in Mumbai, then it is very difficult. Uh, in fact, what happened this year was that we had rains in November, December, and that is November, December of 2021. And this was just after my tomato saplings had started to grow. I still hadn't transplanted them and they were still in those growing pots, the seedling pots. So I had to gather the spinach, the tomato plants, the basil, the celery, everything under two large umbrellas just to keep it from the rain. So you will have to save your plants from too much of water and too much of rain. So tomato plants die simply because they get too much of water. You don't need so much of water for tomatoes.
All right. We have one more question. So Tejaswini is asking, I wanted to know about rooting hormone and can we somehow make it at home?
See, basically phosphorus is what helps rooting take place. Okay. So if you want, what you can do is you can you can have banana peel powder. Okay. Either buy it or you can dry your banana skins in the sun and grind them. And you can use that to line the hole in which you're going to be putting your plant or your seed. But again, not too much of it. You have to be very careful with what you're using. If you don't buy non-GMO seeds, if you buy the seeds that go by a brand called Pyramid or something like that, then those seeds are already coated with a rooting hormone and with some kind of an insecticide and fungicide so that they will sprout and they will grow. But open source seeds, non-GMO seeds are not coated with any of these and they don't usually need any rooting hormone. But if you feel that it is required, then you could try the banana peel powder.
Wonderful. Thank you, Preeti. This was quite an informative session. And the way you showed it practically, that was just brilliant. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and for the questions. And we will see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here. Thanks a lot.